Man. Darn it. Oh. I'm going to turn that off real quick. I try not to do that when I record. Think you could try? You can just like signal to me or something. Oh, this microphone's really good. It's really good.
Why do you think that is?
Because I did some research and it was good quality.
You're sweating to death here, Bird.
Yeah, I get it. Oh,
Hey,
what's up?
how's it going?
Good. Can you try to say something now?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Okay, can you say something now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just really loud in like my earbuds. I was trying to figure out how to turn
Oh.
it a bit. That's all. Can you hear me fine?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you good.
Awesome. Hold on, I want to change the layout real quick. What you like better?
Either one, I think. Do you want a close-up?
I guess, yeah. I like showing my stuff off in the back a little bit as
Yeah.
much as I can.
Uh-huh.
So we can just do it this way.
Cool.
All right. Well, hello, everyone.
Did you know we're already live?
No, this is a recording.
Oh, okay, so you'll just trim it down later.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says live, but I double checked to make sure that it wasn't recording because that would have been
Okay.
weird. I'd just
Yeah.
been sitting here for like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, welcome to the channel. You already know my name is Josiah, and today I have my friend Austin with me, and we are going to briefly talk about Barry, which came out on HBO Max, but it's called Max now, which I still think is really weird.
You just gotta change your name every few years.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to introduce yourself real quick, or?
Sure, yeah. My name's Austin. Josiah and I have been friends now for almost 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride. We met in college, and despite our distance living situation wise, we keep pretty close to talk about movies and our personal lives all the time. So happy to be here and join the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be able to make another video with you. I know it's
Yeah.
been several years since, only a couple years because we did the Spider-Verse one, I think, with your brother.
Yeah, something like that. It's been a while since I've had time to do a live stream since having a kid and all.
Yeah, I get it. I've been trying to get into the routine of making videos on a consistent basis myself with, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, first question. So, how did you first hear about the show or start watching?
I think I was aware of the show just
Hmm.
because of the popularity that it had kind of in the zeitgeist and stuff. But I didn't necessarily have any interest in checking it out till like you started telling me about it. Not that like I thought it was bad, but like I just knew about it, but I didn't know anything about it. So you started telling me about it. I think we were in season 3 at the time. I think season 3 had like just premiered or something when you told me about it, like last year. So I went and I think I binged through it in a couple months or something like that. And that's how I started watching it.
Yeah, I don't remember how I first started. I think like you, I heard about it and I decided
Hmm.
to check it out. Because when I first started watching the show, the first two seasons had already been out, so I like got them and I just like blew through them because
Yeah,
the episodes are so short. So,
right,
um, yeah, I thought it was a really great show. I was kind of sad that they only decided to go with 4 seasons, but I also liked that they decided not to, drag it out way
right.
past its due.
Yeah,
So
they had an ending in mind and they went for it.
yeah. So what did you think about the end of the show?
It was, to an extent, kind of not what I expected and where I thought it would wrap up, but at the same time, I was like, well, I guess that's kind of where this would go. With all of the things that had taken place leading up until that point,
Hmm.
I think that's kind of like the natural conclusion, I think, of where that character would end up. I did kind of hope that he would have redemption and move on, but with all the horrible things he'd done, at
Yeah.
least from a character perspective, maybe if you look at him more as a character rather than a human being, I think it's really good kind of cathartic ending for him.
Yeah. I think going into the final season, I didn't know how I thought the show was going to end. Like you said,
Hmm.
I feel like I wish he would have had gotten that redemption. I mean, I feel
Right.
like he did in the last moment, making
Yeah.
the decision on his own to kind of
Right.
turn
And
himself in and everything. But
yeah.
I didn't expect him to like die like that at the end. I don't know what I
Right.
thought, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And
I
I
just
think
didn't think.
that's what the show is trying to convey is like the important part is he had that redemption for himself.
Hmm.
Whether or not that got to come out publicly, he got to have that redemption for himself. And then there was, I think you and I've talked about kind of the whole way that they wrap things up with his son too, of getting to watch the movie or the series that they
Yeah.
made revolving around that. That was kind of like that catharsis for that character as well. I think
Hmm.
getting to see that his father portrayed in that kind of way, I
Yeah.
think.
Because I was talking to another friend of mine about it, and we talked about the ending with Fuchs when he's talking to NoHo Hank, and he was saying
Yeah,
like it's all lies, like we all just like lie to ourselves and
yeah,
everything, and then to kind of see, Barry's son John kind of smile at the end of the film, and it's like
yeah,
we don't really know what he remembers from that time or anything, but like it's almost like he enjoys believing the lie that his dad was this good person and
right,
everybody got to see him in this light when really his dad
right.
was just like, and it's also interesting. There's like several years in between because he was in high
Hmm.
school, but
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like Sally ever came forward and said, "No, Mr. Kusno didn't do any of this.
right,
He's innocent." It's just more like, "I'm done with all this," and it just seems
right.
like she decided to just
Put it
forget
all
about it
behind her.
all.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. I was surprised. She was her and Fuchs were like the only ones to kind of make it through to the end. I
yeah,
know Barry and Fuchs kind of had their Walter and Jesse moment right there at the end where they didn't say
yeah,
anything, but
yeah,
like that's the last that we see of him. You
yeah.
know?
I think I'd be curious on your opinion on this as well. I feel like Fuchs had the most like change and development throughout the whole series. Like everyone else was like mostly consistent, but I mean, especially in that last season, Fuchs
Mm.
I think changed the most as a character, at least personality wise.
Yeah, I think so. I think he goes to caring for Barry kind of and like also using him, which he
Hmm.
talks about like at the end to like being mad at Barry for kind of leaving him or cutting
Right.
ties with him and then
Yeah.
when he kind of like is going to throw Barry under the bus with the FBI, and then he
Yeah.
decides, no, I still love Barry. Like I'm not going to do that. Screw you guys, But
Yeah.
then Barry goes and does it, and then he gets mad again, but he never gives Barry up. And then him coming out of prison, being like this gang leader,
This
I thought
hardcore
was
guy. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the tattoos everywhere. I
Yeah.
honestly, I think that was probably the biggest change out of every
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. I think some of my favorite funny moments from the final season were NoHo Hank trying to kill Fuchs, coming up with
Oh yeah,
plans to go after
yeah,
him, just
hmm
raiding his mansion, the rocket launcher, like all
yeah.
kinds of stuff.
And he's like the new stage of the plan is give Fuchs whatever he wants, like
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
gonna mess with him anymore.
Yeah. He's definitely one of my favorite characters in the show.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of the ending again, it's like I really thought it was gonna be like Barry Wick, seeing Barry do what he does best and just
Right. Yeah.
go through and rescue Sally and his son. But then it's
Right.
like by the time he gets there, it's like all over. I was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that would have been really cool to see, but I don't have any issues with the way that they decided to
Hmm.
go.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely would have been a cool ending to go that way of like this is who he is as a person, and he's accepted that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
instead, they decide to go the route of him seeking redemption in the end, not necessarily getting it, except
Yeah.
for anyone but himself.
Because I thought that by doing that, he really would have been like the hero in his son's eyes. It's like, oh, we're in
Yeah,
this situation. I don't know what's going
right.
on. Oh, here's my dad coming in guns blazing,
Yeah.
saving me and my mom. And then he's like, no matter what anybody says, he's like, no, I remember my dad coming to save me.
Hmm.
But it's like that doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, he
Yeah.
just only has the way it's kind of because like you see leading up to the events, every time something happens, she's like, Sally's like, Barry. And he's like, who's Barry? Like, he has no idea that Barry's
Hmm.
his dad's real
Right.
name.
Yeah.
And so, uh, it kind of, we know, like, again, we don't really get to see how he processes all of this as an
Uh-huh.
adult,
Yeah.
just saying, like, oh, my dad and my parents were lying to me. We were on the run. Why were we
Yeah.
on the run?
Hmm. What did you think of the time jump that they made? What did it like catch you off guard? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, it really did because I'm like, this is the last season. We're halfway through the last season, and then you're gonna do a time jump
Hmm.
because they had those little like flash forwards
Right.
earlier on, and I thought that was just what Barry was imagining his life was gonna be like,
Hmm.
and then finding out like no, that was the future, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a weird route to take, but
Yeah.
um, like I said to you when we were talking about it, like I think the way that they just went about it made sense, and
Yeah.
I guess the only part of that I didn't really understand was so Sally goes home, Barry's in her house. She's like, let's just go. And then that's it. But wasn't Agent Moss like sitting outside of Sally's house?
I think so.
So it's like, how did they get out without him seeing? Did they climb out a window out back?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
I
There's
don't
some
know. They never really
logistical
explained that.
questions.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, he was just like, "Oh crap," because he sees Sally goes in, and then the next thing you know, it's like almost 10 years later, and I was like, he didn't know, he didn't, you know. I
Yeah.
guess I did want to kind of see Barry face off against him a little bit, of this like fight, you
Yeah.
know what I
Because
mean?
they were kind of like building up to it for at least an episode or two, I think.
Hmm.
And then they had the big cliffhanger with it.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm fine with Barry's like out of it because what
Right.
he's doing, and then he
Yeah.
starts rambling on, and he's like, "Wait, what's Barry talking about?" But
Yeah.
wait, honestly, I thought so, like, I think I mentioned this in the show. Everybody keeps talking about Barry. I think I talked about that in my past video about like redemption and why we feel the need
Yeah.
to be redeemed. But it's like every character was kind of like a scumbag in a way,
Yeah.
like
Right.
NoHo Hanks telling Barry, "Oh, you're a horrible friend," all that. But Barry tried to leave and get out of that life, and then
Hmm.
NoHo Hank blackmailed him to stay in.
Right. Yeah.
Gene Cousineau is so egotistical and narcissistic that he can't just
Yeah.
help himself but be in the spotlight. So
Right.
I thought in that moment that Agent Moss, or what's his name? I can't remember his first name.
Uh,
He's Detective
Kuzno's.
Moss. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim. Okay,
Jim. Yeah.
Jim Moss. So I thought that was going to be his like sin, if you will. I thought he was going to try to go and keep the money for himself and then let
Hmm.
Barry go.
Right.
But then it went a different way. They did that whole like Mark Wahlberg thing with
Yeah.
Snow. He's like, no, he's not going to come out to the woods. He's afraid of the woods.
Yeah.
I was like,
I was
oh,
like, oh, we're really going to get Mark Wahlberg right now?
right. I thought so too. I was like, oh, I mean,
Because I was like, the caliber of show
Hader's.
it is. Yeah, they could grab Mark Wahlberg if they wanted.
Right, right. Did you have a favorite season of the four?
I think probably either season 2 or 3, probably leaning a little bit more towards season 2. I was watching a like season ranking where somebody ranked all the shows on their YouTube channel,
Mm,
and I think they were like going through the reasons why and kind of looking at it from that bird's eye view
yeah.
perspective of not like close to the show necessarily. I think I did agree with them that I think I went with them the whole way through their video of ranking the seasons that I think season 2 because I really like season 1 because it introduces you to all the characters, it sets the
Hmm.
tone for everything. And for me personally, it was something so like different compared to the shows that I usually watch. Like I like dark comedies, but I don't typically watch them. So it was kind of, setting the bar as far as
Yeah.
what I expected going into the show, and just kind of finding that tone. But then I feel like in season 2, you know all the characters, you kind of know what the base story is,
Hmm.
and they can really like play around with the characters and the stories and do some more like interesting things with it. So I think somewhere in the middle of season 2 or 3 would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I watched the first two, so I don't really remember a whole lot.
Yeah,
I think when we talked about, I said season one because, like you said,
yeah,
they introduced the characters and really introducing the comedic aspect as well as
yeah,
the dramatic aspect of trying to be an actor and like being a hitman at
right,
the same
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And there was a lot of emotion that was introduced, like his inner
yeah,
turmoil in
yeah,
that
and I
season.
really liked that in the first season.
Yes, yeah, and then season 2, I just remember I remember the ending where Fuchs kinda betrays him and he goes after
Yeah,
him, and then I remember, the Ron and Lily episode,
hmm,
which was just crazy,
yeah,
um, but I really like season 3 too. I mean, a lot of
hmm,
the camera work and stunts that they did, I was really, like,
yeah,
impressed, and we kinda see that continuing in season
right,
4, so I
yeah,
think I don't know, I'd have to rewatch them
yeah.
or
And
maybe
if I
watch a
remember
video like
right,
that.
Cristobal was introduced in season 2, right? I think. Or was he there from
Maybe?
the beginning? I don't remember. I think he was introduced in season 2 or 3, and I really liked like kind of the dynamic that he added to the show as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's why I lean towards season 2 and 3 because you get the dynamic with him versus Barry and all that, and then him and his relationship with Hank and stuff. So it was all like really interesting, kind of
Yeah.
added drama to the fire of
Mhm.
everything going on.
Right, right. What about, like, episodes? I know I briefly mentioned, like, the Ron and Lily one. Do you have, like, maybe top 2 or 3
Uh,
episodes?
I really liked a lot of the season finales
Mhm.
because they tended to have really interesting like cliffhangers and stuff
Yeah.
of like, oh gosh, I can't wait to see what happens with this.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I could pick one off the top of my head, but I know at least with seasons 1 through 3 because those were leading into future seasons. I really liked all the cliffhangers that they kind of left at with
Mhm.
that of at the end of season 1, everything with Cousineau's girlfriend and all, and then
Yeah.
season 2, like they all had really interesting cliffhangers of like, oh man, I can't wait to see what happens next kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, I think also, like, a lot of the penultimate episodes were
Mhm.
really good too. I thought there was so many different things that in the show I thought they were gonna go one way and then they
Right.
didn't.
Yeah.
So, like, at one point in season 3 when Albert finds out that Barry was the killer hitman that they were looking for,
Yeah.
and then they were in the same, like, military unit and all that, and you kinda hear him, like, shaking and stuff as he walks out of the room because he's gonna go confront Barry. So I
Mhm.
thought they were gonna do, like, like a Bourne thing where like 2
Right.
agents or whatever are
Right, are going
going
after
after
each
each
other,
other,
yeah.
but they end up, like, not doing that, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay." Like,
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with the way that they went about that, but I thought,
Yeah.
like I really thought it was gonna be, like, a big explosive, season finale, but like what you just said, they still were, even if they didn't have a ton of action in them,
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
it's like every time the episode ends, I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like, my jaw just dropped
Yeah.
because the situation that is at the end, I'm like, I don't know how they're
Yeah.
gonna move forward with this.
Right, and overall, the show does a really good job from, like, a writing perspective, like you indicated, of, like, subverting those expectations, of
Mhm.
taking what you're familiar with structure because as we know, a lot of the show revolves around acting and stage performance and TV and movies. So it takes that knowledge that you have going into it and subverts it and does things that are, not what you expected with it. I think it does those things really well too.
Yeah, and I think aside from, like, NoHo Hank and some of the other side characters, there's a lot of, like, minor characters that are really, like, entertaining and stuff too. I
Hmm.
think, I don't remember his name. Was it Matt or something? That, like, donut shop guy?
I don't
And then
remember.
there's, like, that long line at his shop, and he keeps giving all this, like, really great life advice.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
was like he's saying Barry's like, "No, man, you need to dip your toe in the water." Like, sometimes, people after a while, they're not this the way I remember him. He's like, "Go ahead, dip that toe." And I was
Yeah.
like, "What the heck, man?" Like,
Yeah.
it seems so natural within the show, but it's
Hmm.
funny because it seems like a really bizarre thing to happen in real
Right.
life. Like,
Yeah.
when you meet somebody and they start just telling you their life story, and you're like, "Hey, man, like, when did I
Hmm.
ask you to start rambling
Yeah.
on about,
Yeah.
like, we
It's
just
like,
met?"
yeah, it's a heightened reality from our perspective watching it, but for
Yeah.
them, you're when you're in the zone of the show and in
Mhm.
that world, it works.
Yeah, and I think in the same way, like just the whole premise, like a hitman wanting to be an actor, and like how he just openly tells Kusno in the first episode that he kills people, and he
Hmm.
thinks he's doing like a monologue because it's just
Yeah.
so crazy that
Right.
nobody would think that it was true.
Yeah.
And then like then I think the second episode when the Ryan guy that he killed, he's like they were doing the mirror exercise, and he's like, "Oh, Ryan is dead," and everybody's gasping. Barry's just like, the
Hmm.
just doing the exercise. So it's
Yeah.
just using the premise to bring in the humor
Yeah.
because it's so ridiculous, but
Hmm.
like you said, a heightened reality, so like that
Right.
it like works.
Right.
And I think that brought in a lot of the emotion of the show too. Like
Hmm.
whenever I try to describe to people what that like when I'm saying, I think of the problem dog episode from Breaking Bad. So it's
Hmm.
like Jesse kills Gail, and then he goes to the like group help, like that therapy
Right.
group meeting,
Yeah.
and he's like obviously bothered by it. So he starts telling people that he just killed a dog, but we know that he's talking about
Right.
Gail. So then Barry the whole time, like when he just killed Chris, his like
Hmm.
military buddy, and they're doing the Macbeth scene,
Yeah.
and everybody thinks that he just hit some like new level of
Right. Yeah. Some kind of
emotion, like
breakthrough.
act
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but really he's just genuinely
Being
just upset
truthful.
that he
Yeah.
killed
Yeah.
his former friend, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, and then that girl in the class, she was like, "Oh, when I was a kid, I saw a horse when I looked out my window, and that was like
Yeah.
the most defining moment in our life, in
Yeah.
my life." And like I said, in within the reality of the show, it's like that's nothing compared to being in the military, and that's showing just how I don't want to say average, but just how normal people really are. Because
Yeah.
it's like you think of the most defining moment in your life, and the only thing you come up with is when you were a kid and you saw a horse like outside
Yeah.
your window. It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
and then Barry, they're trying to like match Barry based off of his military experience, and
Right.
them trying is just like painfully
Right.
hilarious because it's
Yeah.
like I said, it doesn't compare. And
Yeah.
Barry's just it's like you said, therapeutic for him in a way.
Right.
um, but
And
then
I
that
don't,
starts to
yeah, I don't personally know anything about what it's like being in the military, but I feel like it was a really accurate portrayal of what it's like for someone to be in the military, experience some kind of combat, and have to come back from that and,
Mhm,
settle back into real life. And that's kind of what contributes to the premise of he's trying to get away from that life and do
mhm,
something different, get a fresh start and stuff. But it's just so hard to leave that behind. And
right,
that's how he ends
right.
up being hitman and stuff.
Because it's like we don't get a whole lot of Barry's like backstory. We just know he was
Hmm.
in the military, he gets out, and
Yeah.
then in season 4 they mentioned that Fuchs knew his dad when he was like really little,
Right.
knew Barry's dad when Barry was really little, and
Hmm.
then kind of used that to kind of groom that relationship to him. Maybe not intentionally from the beginning,
Yeah.
but it's like Barry comes back and it's apparent that he doesn't have anybody else but Fuchs.
Hmm.
And then we don't know where Fuchs came from or how he got in that line of work. And that's how he says, Barry, like you did all this training, and like we don't want those skills to go to waste. Why don't you just come back here, do what you did over there, but get paid for it?
Yeah.
And it's like, he
It's
kind of
something he's good
contributed.
at. Like it
Yeah,
works.
yeah. And then we also, because why Barry got kicked out of the military is when he like snapped and killed those people that shot
Hmm.
Albert that really didn't. And it's
Right.
like we don't know what kind of person he was before he went in. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that we just don't know, but we can kind of see the effects of it like throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really know what else to ask at this point. Do you have any other questions or comments or thoughts about
Um,
the show?
I mean, we covered a lot of it. It's one of those shows that I don't know, just kind of kept surprising me as it
Hmm.
continued. I mean, I only jumped in, once season 3 had come out, so I caught up with 1 through 3 pretty quick, and I only watched season 4 live, but I just think it's one of those really cool, unique shows that I can look
Hmm.
back on fondly of, you know, going along on the journey
Yeah.
with the characters and stuff like that. They're all unique, they're all interesting, and they're all kind of compelling in their own
Hmm.
way. And like you said, none of them were particularly good people,
Right.
but they
Yeah.
each kind of had their redeeming qualities, and they had
Hmm.
enough of that it was something that you could root for them and hope that they would make the right decision. Kind of like
Yeah.
it's just like kind of like in Breaking Bad of like there's so many bad people, but you're still like rooting for them, hoping that they
Hmm.
might kind of see the fault in their ways and stuff and make a decision to change. And Barry is definitely striving for that, but it's just so hard to kind of remove yourself from what's been such a
Mhm.
big part of your life. And
Yeah.
so I think the show does a really good job of kind of encapsulating that and leaving its viewers with a lot to think about, like
Mhm.
we've talked about with redemption,
Yeah.
and that difficult past you may have had, whatever that would be. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and go a little bit of faith in film in here.
hmm
We do kind of see a lot of the ways that like sin affects other people, not just
hmm
us.
right.
Because I mean, look at Q Snow. Like at the end of the show, like he was completely innocent, but they're like, "Oh, you never told us about the money that Barry gave you. You know,
hmm
you shot your son." So it's like now his son, like a long time ago, didn't really trust him, or they
Right.
kind of had a broken relationship. And he's like, "You just shot me, Dad. You didn't apologize."
Yeah.
And then of course you said you were coming back to stop it, but at the right like tune, you were ready to jump back in and oh, Daniel Day Lewis and Mark Wahlberg and Barry's
Yeah.
really sympathetic. And then
Right. Yeah.
when they pull him into that room and his son's there and Jim Moss is there and then the police and he was like, no, like I didn't. They're like, no, you groomed Barry and you used him to kill her when she found out about the money. And he was
Yeah.
just like, that's disgusting. But it's like
Yeah.
the way that he lived his life and the way that they're like Moss even points out that Gene is a really good actor. So
hmm
it's like because if you're continuing to I guess to live in sin depending on what that is, it could really affect your life and like everybody else's life, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of the famous How I Met Your Mother interventions.
Tell me about that. I never seen How I Met Your Mother, as you know.
Oh, anytime anybody picks up some habit or hobby that the rest of the gang doesn't like, they bring out this banner that says intervention and they hold an intervention for
Really?
'em. Yeah.
That sounds
So they
hilarious.
all get like randomly addicted to these silly, like I said, habits or hobbies. And then somewhere in the episode, they walk into the room and everyone's just standing there like, we need to address this.
Have you ever been in a situation like that?
With an
I'm just
intervention? No.
yeah, I'm just messing with you.
No,
No,
I'm
but
a pretty good person.
yeah, your wife has never said, "All right, I can't do it anymore with the Blu-rays, like, you gotta
Yeah,
stop
you're
with the
done. We
movies."
need to talk about this.
Yeah,
No,
because I
this is
was
my
telling my
one
wife, I was
thing.
like, "I need, like, a new shelf because 'cause I'm running out of
Yeah,
room here," and she was like, and I'm like, "But this is, like, what I do, like, I gotta have my
yeah,
stuff,"
yeah. This is my
So,
one thing.
my one thing.
Yeah,
Everything else in the house, you can do whatever you want, but I
yep,
could just have this one thing.
yep,
Like I said, we're renovating the office right now, so I got in the corner of the living room, this is, like, my DVD stuff for
yeah,
now. Um, so when I get, like, my posters up and the right up in the office, that's gonna be, like, my one thing, my one
yep,
room.
yep,
So,
yeah. And I like how it looks there in the living room. I think it looks
yeah.
good.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have my little Blade Runner thing up there, and then
hmm
she has to have a place for some of her plants, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I can compromise and just
Yeah. I
give
figured the
you
plant
this
wasn't you,
one."
but it's a good accent.
Yeah. Well, I think we could wrap this up. I mean, it was such a great conversation, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me.
Yeah, it's definitely a show that begs conversation for sure.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I know as I was watching along with it, I was always texting you about where I was, what was happening. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah,
it's definitely one that is a cool one to talk about with all that it encompasses.
yeah. Well, all right, man. Well, I will catch you later.
All right. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.